Why would you want to let maybe half that nitrogen go up into the air when you can get it into the soil and keep it there for crop growth? You know, it'd be madness. You wouldn't go spilling half a bag of fertilizer and wasting chemical fertilizer. It's the very same. It's a valuable resource. So I suppose, to summarise, use it wisely and target it, as you say, to the fields that really need it. And I think that's what Don is doing really well here on his farm.
A couple of weeks ago, Teagasc held a farm walk on Don Summers' farm in Wexford. Don is a tillage signpost farmer and is leading the way in taking the complexity within farming and putting it into practice on his farm. Following on from last week's episode, this week I chat to Kieran Hickey, a Teagasc tillage advisor, about cover crops. But I first talked to Martin Burke, a Teagasc advisor, about organic manures and how Don is getting the best out of this valuable resource.
Since 2020, Don has been taking in a lot of organic manures, and something I just saw earlier was his average phosphorus on the farm back in 2010 was 4 parts per million, and it's now about 7 parts per million. And his average potash has gone from about 110 to about 180. So certainly I would say the introduction of the organic manures has helped to build the fertility on the farm, which is wonderful. But the other thing is, as you mentioned there, the word savings. And what I'm going to present today is some work that I was involved in 2015 and 16 on poultry manure, using it and showing how you could make significant savings. And you could directly replace your chemical fertiliser with the poultry manure. And similarly, the Nutri2Cycle project, which is a 4-year project, and we have proven on that now over 4 years of cropping. So the same plots get the same organic manure each year. The only thing that changes is the crop in that field. And in each of those 4 years, we had maize, we've had spring wheat, we've had oilseed rape and winter wheat, and there's been no significant difference where you substitute in a well-balanced programme. You tailor it up and you substitute maybe up to half of your total requirement with organic manure instead of chemical, and it does the job.
And I know, Martin, it's maybe it's not the right question, but to a degree it might be on some farms who have access to an awful lot of organic manures. Is there a limit on the amount that can be taken in onto a farm?
Yeah, well, everyone is governed by the nitrates directives, so you have to stay within the 170 kilograms of organic N per hectare on your total hectare on the whole farm. And this is where you just need to observe carefully that you're not going over that, and especially if you're a mixed farm, because you need to take into account the organic N that the livestock are. So you need to know your total organic N already, what it is if you've mixed farm. If you're purely tillage, it'll all be coming from the organic manure that you import. And you just need to stay within it, and that's effectively it, Michael. I
suppose I often heard a case that it's often the phosphate that's more limiting than the nitrogen in the first place.
Yeah, it depends on then the organic manure you see. So some of the organic manures would be higher in nitrogen and phosphorus, and some would be maybe higher in phosphorus versus nitrogen and so on. So you need to know. So if we take, for example, and actually, as my previous job as a conventional tillage advisor, I would have had to do a lot of nitrates records and inspections over the years, and the ones you would watch very carefully are where people were perilously close to the limit was phosphorus. So I think it's just to watch the phosphorus levels, and it goes back to knowing what's in your organic manure. No two manures are alike, and I suppose that's the challenge with organic manures maybe versus chemical fertiliser. When you buy, for example, a ton of 10-10-20, you know how much NP and K is sitting there in the yard. When you get in 20 tonne of poultry manure, you're not 100% sure unless you get it tested. And there is differences. We've seen that in the trial work over the years, and it's important to get it tested.
And for growers then who have access maybe to a more limited amount, is there areas or fields on the farm that they should be more targeting rather than arguably is convenience by the road, chuck it there and we'll throw it out into that field, or does it need to be a little bit more thought about?
I'd say traditionally that was the case, and you just took it, and there was no great thought put into what field you put it in. So it goes back, like you're going to hear a lot today about precision management, and a lot of people, when they hear the word precision management, they think of technology. But in my opinion, precision management starts with making precise decisions. This is where you start with your soil test. You see what the P and K, status of your ground is, and then you try to match an organic manure that'll tailor to that field. So if your field, for example, is maybe low in potash, that's an ideal one maybe for cattle slurry, which is high in potash. Similarly, if you're low in phosphorus, maybe if you're in an area where you can get dairy sludge, you target the dairy sludge, which is high in phosphorus. So there's a lot of thought has to go into a good plan. This is where you want a good advisor to sit down with you and tailor that organic manure plan to, so that you can have it just right to balance up.
So the starting point, Martin, would be a really well done soil test, up-to-date soil test on all your fields to know exactly where to go and exactly what to do.
Yeah, soil testing, and then I would say if you are then getting in regular manures, test them each year as well to see, you know, what's in it. Yeah, because diets can change. If you're particularly if you're taking in poultry manure, they could be on a different diet from one year to the next or whatever, and depending on what kind, whether if it was layers or broilers even, and what they're fed, and that could change the phosphorus level big time in the slurry, in the dung.
Just the last word I noticed from your board here in front of me, you have the word, I see it here, incorporate within 24 hours. How crucial is that?
Well, if you want to maximise the nitrogen, in particularly to stop the nitrogen escaping, volatilising, very important.
The stronger the smell, essentially the more nitrogen is going to be lost.
Particularly with slurries, with cattle slurries, pig slurries, you want to get them incorporated as quickly as you can. But it applies to all, because why would you? If for example if a ton of poultry manure is worth €70, of that €70, 30 euros of that 70 could be nitrogen. Why would you want to let maybe half that nitrogen go up into the air when you can get it into the soil and keep it there for crop growth? It'd be madness. You wouldn't go spilling half a bag of fertilizer and wasting chemical fertilizer. It's the very same. It's a valuable resource. So I suppose, to summarise, use it wisely and target it, as you say, to the fields that really need it. And I think that's what Don is doing really well here on his farm.
That's brilliant, Martin. Thanks very much.
No problem, Michael.
I then walked across the field and caught up with Kieran Hickey, a local tillage advisor, and asked him how Don is utilising cover crops on his farm.
As Don said himself here, ploughing is not popular in this area here because we're in a slightly heavier soil type, and the plan is the main source of cultivation is non-inversion. So the cover crops here are really to keep the soil structure and to enable the ground to be cultivated the following spring. We're in a field of winter wheat stubbles here, and you can see we have a good stand of Phacelia and vetch that was sown on the 10th of August. We've a mixture here of different types of sowing systems here just for the trial here today, or for demonstration here today. But the main concept here is Don tries the very minute the bales come off the field, and before he would start harvesting that day or that, out here straight away and get the cover crops sown. He would like to roll them, but really the sowing date is more important than waiting for this perfect day to sow it. So in straight away, in early. Now, this year he was sowing the cover crops with a 3-metre disc and a seeder on the back, but with the expansion of cover crops on the farm, he's moved to a 5-metre disc, and then he's coming in with a 6-metre drill sown after. But the long-term plan is, under TAMS 3, is to get a seeder to mount on that 5-metre disc cultivator to enable a very fast establishment of cover crops. And as he said himself, the success to a lot of these, it's timing. Then the variety that's here today, which is Phacelia and vetch, is to enable oilseed rape to be grown in the rotation.
And we have different, just looking in front here, we have, Don has done a few, I suppose, mini trials, here, really, or experiments here.
Yeah.
I see one in front of me here is direct drill, and there's another one over here where there's bale straw and direct drill.
Yeah.
Do we see any differences here between them all?
Yeah, there is a massive difference. The main one to take, or the take-home message, is where you have chopped straw and you go in with the direct drill, you have less establishment, and even where it does establish, they're smaller plants. It looked good at the start. When the plants started coming up, they looked relatively even, but as the crop started to develop, the slugs started into this one as well, where you had the direct drill into chopped straw. So that's really the main message here, is that the bit of tillage that you're doing with the disc is helping a lot. And if we look across, there's a field across the road there, Michael, which was also winter wheat, but the difference here, this was baled, that was under the straw incorporation measure, and where the straw was disked in and then a good job done on the disking, there was no ill effect of having straw chopping or not being in the straw chopping scheme, but it really was the bit of tillage and the timing was getting that seed bed for the establishment.
So direct drill might be more suited to where you take the straw off, perhaps.
Absolutely.
It's more a cleaner kind of soil.
A cleaner thing, but I'd say you know, he really wants to get back to the system of, if he had that seeder on the disc cultivator, it'd be a one sweep and get it in, and then ideally get it rolled, but he's prepared to sacrifice rolling for getting it in maybe a week earlier or something like that, because
of course that's always the difficulty. You're trying to do that
Yeah.
in the middle of harvest, really.
Yeah.
And your ideal time is what, early August or mid-August, somewhere around there.
And
It's
he
hard to do it.
realised that with a 3 metre cultivator, which was a really good cultivator and a lovely seeder on it, that doing a great job, but just not able to do it fast enough. And he was losing the kind of the speed effect there. Yeah.
So Don has a clear path in terms of what he wants to do, which is basically establishing as many cover crops as he can.
Yeah.
But a clear path in terms of the cultivation way. He's going to try and get it established in as good a way as he can.
Yeah, like the facility is in here as a kind of a soil conditioner, or to kind of keep that ground freed up, so that when he comes in here in the spring, the rotation here is, this was winter wheat, it's going to be spring malt and barley for next year. In here, one run, cultivate the field and sow it. And really what the cover crop here is doing is enabling that to happen. Don is participating in the Burt Malt Earthworm Programme, and as part of that programme they provided him with satellite imagery over the last 5 years of the farm. And the interesting thing they came up with was that over the 5-year period, the farm has had a cover on the soil here for on an average of 327 days of the year. So really what's happening here is, the obvious benefits would be from water quality in that soak out period, but the other benefit is that the soil is always alive, and that's really his aim. That he was particularly happy and reassured by that figure that the system, would work, because the soil is getting so much root system in it.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much for your time on that. I see a big crowd coming here shortly, so I'm going to leave you to it. Thank
Cheers,
you.
Thanks.
So that's it this week, and my thanks to Kieran and Martin for joining me on the show. Don't forget, if you enjoyed the podcast, then recommend it to a friend or colleague, and as always, rate, review and follow on Apple or Spotify so you never miss an episode. And for more information, go to teagasc.ie. I'm Michael Hennessy. Thanks for listening. I'll be back next week with more tillage news and advice.